Hello my dear friends and family, I'm operator Starsky, bringing you coffee, mustache and new updates on Russia's scope and desperation. Today we will traditionally talk about the most recent updates and news from Ukraine and beyond, the power outages in Ukraine, our response and the situation around Pokrovsk. This is the frontline focus. Let's roll. First, Ukraine's blackout situation. After another massive barrage, our grid unfortunately took a punch. We're talking substations hit around the lines that feed Khmelnytsky and Rivne nuclear plants, emergency cuts across regions and generation dropping dramatically, something that we've already experienced in winter 2022. The fact is, Russians again tried to turn winter into a weapon. Didn't hurt, unfortunately it did, but did it break Ukrainians? Of course it didn't. Crews are already patching, rerouting and repairing the damaged grid. Again, nothing new, it was the same old terrorist playbook, with just more drones and missiles this time, and basically the same Ukrainian answer: fix, adapt and respond. Now, despite the blackouts, Ukrainians are prepared because we actually learn. You can hear generators humming in the courtyards, power banks stacked like artillery shells on kitchen tables, and those points of invincibility are open again across the country. We're talking tents, schools and administration buildings where people can charge, warm up, grab tea or coffee and check on relatives. There are thousands of these across the country, with more mobile points added this season after the State Emergency Service said the network needs expanding. Meanwhile, the Russians crow about turning off Ukraine, but at the same time they themselves don't have this kind of civil defense culture. Which brings us to the fun part, because striking a power grid is actually a game for two, and Ukrainian defenders have been very busy not only intercepting Russian drones and missiles, but also sending symmetrical response to the Russian terrorist land. Between November 3rd and November 10th, several Russian regions actually got a taste of the darkness they wished upon Ukraine. On November 3rd and 4th, Ukrainian drones paid a visit to Kursk Oblast, where the Rilsk substation got lit up, leaving multiple districts without power. The local Russian officials whined about tens of thousands in the dark. Same night, a separate strike hit Kstovo industrial zone in Nizhny Novgorod. Very interesting neighborhood there, I must say. Oil depots and petrochemicals, and suddenly their carefully guarded rear didn't look so guarded anymore. November 5th wasn't quiet either. Reports from inside Russia pointed to hits on energy infrastructure in Oryol and Vladimir regions. No casualties, they said, just damage. I mean, of course, just damage that forces you to shut down lines, redispatch, and explain to angry Russians why hitting got funny in November. Which is something we could actually observe in those regions where it only took just a couple of hits on the Russian power grid for the Russians to start nagging, cursing their own government. Imagine if it happens across the whole Russia, which, by the way, is something we should definitely try. Then came November 6th, and that one was actually devastating. The good Ukrainian drones smacked the Volgograd oil refinery hard enough that Lukoil halted operations on key units. Fire and shutdowns were reported, and more wonderful footage of thick black smoke over their untouchable assets flooded the internet. Same day, a substation in the Volgograd region caught fire after another drone attack, because apparently their air defense works absolutely perfectly after the explosion. And basically, Russian terrorists keep learning what symmetrical response actually means, and from what I can see, they don't really like it. On November 8th, Belgorod had a very educational evening. Missiles, drones, fires, and by their own governor's numbers, over 20,000 Russians left without electricity. The local reporting and Ukrainian outlets added that a thermal power plant took hits to the turbine hall and boiler house. And up north that night, 3 drones hit a substation in Volgograd region because Distance is just a number when your country is a leading producer of combat drones. November 9th kept the pressure on. Voronezh, a city of over 1 million Russians, had a utility facility burning after drones were electronically jammed right into it. The strike caused short blackouts and drops in heating temperatures. Meanwhile, in Rostov Oblast, Taganrog's transformer substation had an explosion and power cuts. So while Russians in Moscow are busy celebrating blackouts in Ukraine, there are all those Russian residents of Kursk, Belgorod, Bryansk, Voronezh, Rostov, Volgograd, and even Volgograd and Oryol, who also don't have electricity. Will they join the celebration? This question remains unclear. Now, switching to Pokrovsk, my friends, 2 weeks ago the Russian terrorists were yelling about a fast victory and nice little pocket around the city. As usual, they tried to Photoshop reality, but on the ground our defenders in Mirnograd and Pokrovsk held the line, smashed assaults and slowed the Russian advances. The Institute for the Study of War's latest assessments, November 8th and 9th, say that the enemy tried to push really hard, but they did not achieve confirmed advances in the Pokrovsk direction, and the overall pace of Russian offensive activity temporarily decreased, which basically means they tried to open a door with their faces, but the door turned out to be stronger. And here's a very symbolic moment. Our guys planted the Ukrainian flag right in downtown Pokrovsk on the town hall that the invaders had already claimed as captured in the Russian cartoons. Video footage showed Ukrainian units that cleared the site and put the flag back where it belongs. And that stunt hurt the Russian propaganda machine much worse than any vodka shortage. And also doing numbers online, that lovely clip where a bunch of Russian invaders were taking a cheerful selfie in central Pokrovsk, to report capturing another street, and then an uninvited Ukrainian drone dropped in to say hello. Fact is, when you call the town yours and still get droned on the main street, apparently it's not your town. Now, operationally, what to expect in the nearest future around Pokrovsk? The ISW notes that Russians are trying to interdict Ukrainian logistics towards Mirnograd to collapse the defense. But that takes sustained mass that Russians are struggling to generate after all the recent losses. We see special operations raids, heli-borne insertions, and coordinated drone/artillery strikes from Ukrainian side to keep corridors open. My personal forecast is that we will see grinding positional fights on the approaches, also periodic enemy pushes to cut roads into the city, but with our control still visible in the center and the flag episode proving our presence. If we keep persistent raids in the Russian rear and hold Mirnograd's line, the Russian pocket remains just a hole in the air. Dear friends, this is the Frontline Focus, and yes, winter is coming, but we've been living in this winter since 2022. Ukraine charged up, we share power, we work the grid, and we sent our drones to turn off the lights of the terrorists who wanted darkness for Ukraine, because that's exactly what they deserve. Don't forget to subscribe, share this to keep Ukraine heard, and as always, be safe. I'll see you in the comments.